Breaking in today with some extremely sad news. Baseball, the Mets, we here at SNY losing an icon and a friend. Hall of Famer Ralph Kiner passing away this afternoon at the age of 91. Ralph, of course, a great player. His days in Pittsburgh, led the league in home runs 7 straight years. He was the national star. He was our friend, and he was an original New York Met, broadcasting games since 1962 through this past season, and certainly touched the lives of many, many people. Let's go to one of those people now. On the phone is our Keith Hernandez. And Keith, clearly a sad day losing a guy like Ralph. So many stories about him, so many memories about him, but what's the first thing that comes to your mind about what he meant to you as a person?
Well, Ralph was a wonderful guy, as you know, Kev. And, when I knew Ralph originally, when I went on my first Kiner's Corner when I was a Cardinal, it took me around 3 years to have a good game in New York to get on the show. I remember that. It was the first time that I had met him and got to talk with him. But I really got to know him in the booth and playing in New York. And when I must say that, I think probably what I remember the best is that Ralph was always, when I was kind of coming on the scene, Ralph had been part of the original broadcast team. He and Murph were the two survivors. Lindsey Nelson, of course, was gone. And, Ralph could have been very territorial and about his work and felt maybe this was, the changing of the guard was coming soon and not been helpful or whatever. And you know what? He was just so great. I had no experience in the booth, and he was so helpful to me and so gracious when I kind of stepped on him a few times earlier. I didn't know my way around, and he was just such a gentleman and never just a class act. And, I'll miss him. The only good thing we can draw from it is he lived a very long time and that he had a very full life, a wonderful life, and he'll be missed.
Yeah, I think you summed it up well. We're talking with Keith Hernandez on the passing of the great Ralph Kiner. Keith, you talked about Kiner's Corner. What was that like? What was it like to get asked to go on, and then in that atmosphere, what was it about Ralph that had a way to make players feel so comfortable?
Well, Ralph was just a character, and, he was very sociable, and it was a big deal going on Kiner's Corner. Back in those days, in the 70s, which I can speak to, there wasn't a post-game show in a studio at a ballpark. There was it was the only one, and you figured, gosh, we're in New York, and this is a big deal, even though when that was going on, the Mets were not doing so grand in the mid to late 70s. It was a big deal to go on there. Plus, he always gave you that $100 bill, and you're on the road, so you're always able to take the guys out for dinner or for a few drinks. And, I was steeped in baseball history, which is something that's lacking today in today's players. But I knew, of course, who Ralph Kiner was. So for me, as a baseball player and fan, to meet Ralph Kiner was a huge deal.
Keith, can you put into words what, he's had 2 careers. Had the Hall of Fame career as a player, and, to be broadcasting for a team for 52 years. Can you put into words, to be the type of player he was, and then to also have the excellence of the craft of broadcasting to do it for as long as he did and as well as he did it for?
Well, a lot of things are timing, and Ralph evidently was spotted, I guess, when he did when it was a Bing Crosby Pro-Am tournament in Pebble Beach. He was spotted interviewing, I think, I can't think of the comedian, and that's how he was spotted. I read that story, and here comes 62, and the Mets are a new team, need a broadcast team, so the timing was there. Ralph was incredibly bright, intelligent man, well-spoken, and I just think it was just a natural for him. But like you said, for someone to go from one field and into another and be successful in both, it's quite extraordinary, and just credit to Ralph's intelligence and talents.
Keith, to follow that up, what you're talking about, he was the GM of the Padres, and to save some money, he did some play-by-play, and that's how he originally got started. And Ralph was just a great man. And before we let you go, Keith, and thanks for the time, do you have a favorite? He was as we know, a great storyteller. Do you have a personal favorite from being around him, or one that he told that you always laugh at?
Well, first of all, real quickly, that'll be something that'll be lost. That past that Ralph brought, that history, he saw Babe Ruth play.
Yeah.
Ty Cobb, Ted Williams played against that, Joe DiMaggio. I can't bring that to the booth. I was not around then. We lose that, and that's very sad. Mets fans, too, lose that. But any one story, I just remember on an airplane ride we were flying, and I just had to I cornered him. I made sure I sat next up in front of the row in front of him. And I remember we're flying, doesn't matter where we were flying. And I talked for around 2 hours with him about hitting. I just couldn't wait to pick his brain. And it was quite interesting. His philosophies were completely opposite of mine, and that which was so funny. We talked about a lot of things, and he was more of a pull hitter than I was, and a power hitter, which I wasn't. So I'll remember that flight. That's when I think of Ralph. When I say Ralph Kiner, I remember that particular flight and that 2-hour conversation we had about hitting, which was just fascinating.
I'm sure everyone would have loved to hear that. And Keith, what did he say? Singles hitters drive Fords, home run hitters drive Cadillacs. Ralph Kiner, he drove a Cadillac. Keith, thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Okay, my pleasure. God rest his soul.